land is the resources, the sole resources that most of the poor people have in this part of the world. So we have to make sure that its security, its use is trying to attain very sustainable development, because it's the sole resource that the poor, the rich, and everybody has in this particular part of the world. So we have to make sure that land is used in a sustainable way, and the land is used as a resource to improve the livelihood of the people, to improve the security of the people, to improve the totality of being of the people.
Ningeshauri kwa jamii hata katika nchi kwamba tubadilike. Tuwe na mabadiliko. Tutunze ardhi. Maana yake bila kuitunza hiyo ardhi inaweza katokea madhara mbalimbali. Kwa sababu kutokana na kizazi kinapoongezeka, jamii inaongezeka. Kwa hiyo tubadilike. Tukubaliane na mabadiliko. Tutunze ardhi vizuri.
This dialogue in Iringa is part of the Ihemi Cluster in Southern Tanzania. And this dialogue is part of a global network, a global initiative that we call the Land Use Dialogues. The Land Use Dialogue is a global initiative led by a variety of international stakeholders that are seeking to understand practical application of the landscape approach in some very key landscapes around the world.
Land use dialogues are very important because they bring together stakeholders that at different levels they have an impact on the land and resources. And it recognizes the fact that for a long time people have been, there are many initiatives that exist that are being implemented not in a coordinated manner, and that has brought about many challenges of their own, and they include the depletion of land, but also of resources.
In Ihemi Cluster, there are some pressing issues in land use. One issue is in water. Most of the water from Ruaha, littoral Ruaha, it contributes to Ruaha National Park, which is the biggest park currently in the country, supporting wildlife there. Also, there is two hydropower which supply electricity in the country, the Mtera Dam and the Kidatu Dam. These rivers goes to that process. So the management of these rivers is of high importance. But if you go and look the way these rivers is being managed from where they come from, actually from the small tributaries, you'll find that the farming system in that area is not favoring. We have the wetland farming, which is common. People have been doing farming in that area and then exposing water, so there is risk that water crisis is going to happen. And if it's going to happen, it's not going to be a disaster to only those people farming in those areas. Rather, it's going to be a country disaster. There is an issue of climate change. One part of the Iringa region was the famous maize producer area. The area is called Isman. But if you go nowadays in Isman, you will wonder, because that's the area where in Iringa region, people will go food insecure almost every year. So there is some changes. So in the land use dialogue, if possible, let people have discussion on how they can combat climate change issues.
So being in Tanzania has allowed us a real exciting opportunity to see actions on the ground, to learn about land uses on the ground, and to see how the landscape approach is being implemented, or what are the issues around implementation of the landscape approach. One of the things we're doing at IUCN under an initiative called Sustain Africa, which is supporting this initial dialogue process, is looking at how do water issues, land issues, business investment opportunities, how do they all link together in the landscape, and what are the trade-offs that are needed between these different land uses to optimize land use.
SAGCOT is an organization established by partnership between the government of Tanzania, and the private sector to facilitate transformation of agriculture in the southern highlands of Tanzania by 2030. So the arrangement is to make sure agricultural actors in the southern highlands of Tanzania are well coordinated in a way that agriculture transformation can be done in an inclusive and a sustainable way.
Land use systems, land use planning systems, we have the national level, I said, we have the zonal level, and we have the district level, and also the village level. Trying to understand how land use is being used by different stakeholders and who are really involved, different stakeholders, and how they can negotiate the land security, the land functions, and the benefit that can be accrued from the particular piece of land. This is what we're trying to do in the SAGCOT initiative.
So when you're talking about the land use dialogue and land plan and landscape, the women's issue becomes very, very important because they have to be part of the process in the decision making and also making their voices heard and also giving us an opportunity to understand what are their needs, what are some of the needs that are particularly more important to them because they're women and given their circumstances, and most of them are economically disempowered. So what does this process mean for them, and what kind of support do they think they need that we can support them, and how do we take their voices up and have their voices heard, but also to empower them, to just make sure that we have their voices, we have as many voices from women as as possible in the whole process, especially when you're talking about land use, because then we are discussing about who should use land and for what and how much land. And that is very, very important for women, especially for when you're looking at, for example, in Tanzania, 8% of the people, depend on land, like 70% depend on land, and they live in rural areas. And the big chunk of that are women. So then land is very, very important for them.
Yana maana sana kwangu. Nazungumza yana maana sana kwangu.
Kwa nini?
Kwa sababu kwanza kabisa yananijenga. Alafu ninazidi kujifunza zaidi namna ya kuhifadhi mazingira, kutunza mazingira, yani ardhi. Kwa sababu tukiwa huko nyumbani kijijini, maana sisi tunaishi vijijini. Na unapokutana na watu kutoka sehemu mbalimbali, ina maana unajifunza zaidi. Kuna vitu vingine ambavyo unajifunza ambavyo sikuvijua. Kwa mfano, mimi nilikuwa naelewa mtu akisema kwamba matumizi ya ardhi, najua ni hata akisema matumizi ya eneo ni kitu kimoja. Sasa kumbe kuna tofauti saizi. Kuna matumizi ya ardhi, kuna matumizi ya eneo. Na kikubwa zaidi matumizi ya eneo ndio makubwa zaidi. Sababu kwenye eneo ndio kwenye shughuli zote.
Mimi nikiwa natokea shirika Tagrode Iringa, ina manufaa mengi kwa sababu kwanza tunafanya kazi na jamii hiyo ambayo inatutegemea tuweze kuwaletea mabadiliko, hususan katika swala zima la hewa ya ukaa ambao ni oxygen. Inaweza kuwasaidia pia katika kufanya kilimo endelevu kwa kutunza ardhi zao na kufanya kilimo cha tija, yani wakaweza kujihusisha na biashara, lakini pia wakaweza kuimarisha mazingira ya familia zao na kuongeza vipato vya maisha yao.
So in Tanzania we got the SAGCOT corridor, and in Mozambique we have the Zambezi Valley Development Corridor. And we try to work with the various stakeholders and partners in the corridor to support the development in a more inclusive and sustainable way. We try to integrate various strategic objectives. One is around water and improving water management, but also ensuring the inclusive access to water. Another element is around land, and it's both ways. There is an inclusive part of the land, how the land is allocated, how the land is sold, and the second element is around how the land is managed. We also work with business. What we're trying is to work with small, medium and large-scale business to improve the practices in being more inclusive and in being greener. For Africa, and that's one of the key elements for sustain, is to realize that the way that African countries are going to manage the natural capital, their biodiversity, the ecosystem and ecosystem services, and the way they're going to mainstream that in economic decision is going to enable or not their implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals.
The challenge of intensifying agriculture in the Ihemi Cluster, as it is for this whole corridor, is to balance the need for agricultural growth with the needs of the smallholder farmers here who make up most of the population, and the needs of the ecosystem, which actually is critical to the development of agriculture. Without water, without critical biodiversity and forests, agriculture intensification long term won't work.
For us to be able to achieve sustainability and more specifically landscape approach in such landscape like the Ihemi Cluster, we need to ensure that everyone is aligned and everyone understands its role and responsibilities and plays the role. The private sector is an active actor of such landscape, and the private sector has the capacity to touch a large scale of stakeholders and a large scale of smallholders.
Katika vijiji ambavyo tumepita kuna changamoto ambayo inatokana na wananchi kutoshirikishwa moja kwa moja. Yaani kwa mfano, taasisi inatafuta mradi au inapokea mradi kutoka taasisi za juu za kimataifa, inakuja kutupatia kwamba tuwapelekee wananchi. Lakini tunapopeleka ile miradi kwa wananchi, unakuta wao hawana ule utayari au wanaipokea wakiwa na matarajio makubwa zaidi ya sisi tulionayo. Kwa hiyo inatakiwa uwepo ushirikishwaji mzuri kutoka ngazi ya chini kabisa ya wananchi ambao wataweza kutoa nini kifanyike, na sisi tutafanya kutokana na wanachohitaji tukishirikiana na serikali husika iliyopo madarakani.
By bringing all these people together, all the people, institution and processes together, we can find together a way to resolve not only the conflicts that exist at the landscape level, but also to see if there are certain things and processes we can change so that we can ensure not only inclusivity, but particularly a more sustainable use of the resources that we have.
Loss of biodiversity, water crisis, and climate change are global challenges that everyone will face. No matter where you are, no matter where you live, we are all on the same boat. If we want to keep our boat on a sustainable road, we need to be all at the same page. To be all at the same page, we need to dialogue. We need to discuss about the activities, the actions, the projects that we need to do to reach our goal. Remembering that everything that we are doing or will do will affect not just humans, but all the other species on the world.
Jambo ninalopenda niongezee, ningependa hii elimu, haya mafunzo tunayoyapata majadiliano tunayojadiliana hapa, kama tungeyapata wote na wenzangu nioacha nyumbani kule. Maana naona wivu fulani kwamba haya nayapata mimi, wenzangu yatawafikiaje?
We need efficient collaboration between different stakeholders, the government, the development partners, civil society organization, research organization, as well as financial institutions.
I think one thing I can say when you're talking about the land use dialogue, we have to make it practical and we have to make it move and fast because we need it.